What's up, you guys? So said the leader talking. Happy holidays to you. I say this because I have a special book reading I want to, the excerpt reading I want to do for you guys. Take a look, you guys. Heatheria's Noel Carol. This one, you're probably wondering why I'm doing this. It's because Christmas is coming up, and I wanted to share with you my favorite Christmas story told from a feminine focus. Ready? Let's begin. This is from the first chapter where Gemini Stone, who is the Scrooge in this story, is basically making her way to work, and she has a conversation with Alicia Duffield, her employee. Let's begin. The elderly but beautiful and wealthy Gemini Gem Stone walked through the snowy streets of London, England, heading to work at her counting house. She loved money, but she loved swindling the poor and taxing the widowed and elderly more. She had earned a reputation of being avaricious and stingy with her loans to people, especially since the people she loaned money to always had to pay back with interest compounded by the day. As she stopped in front of a bell ringer guarding a money bucket and taking donations, he requested, "Some pence for the poor, love? It is Noel, after all." "They're not worth it," Jim replied ominously, and walked away without so much as a second thought. Then she walked further down the street until she was able to see the large sign in the window, which read, "Stewart and Stone Savings and Loan." As she pushed open the door, which in turn rang a bell on the upper inside door frame, she noticed her tall, willowy, magenta-bobbed faithful employee, Alicia Duffield, opening the iron stove and rubbing her hands together. And on that, Jen cleared her throat loudly. Alicia gasped when she heard the loud throat clearing. She chuckled nervously. Good day, Miss Stone," she said timidly. Jem humped inwardly and then scolded, "Mrs. Duffield, what do you think you're doing with that piece of coal?" And Alicia looked down at the small black rock in her cupped hands. Well, Miss Stone, I was just trying to..." She paused briefly. "Thaw out the ink, ma'am." Jem humped inwardly again and used her cane of pure onyx stone to knock the coal lump out of Alicia's hands. It landed in the emergency fuel bucket beside the employee's balancing book. "You borrowed a piece of coal from me last week, Alicia, and you haven't even paid me for that one yet!" Alicia hung her head. "I am sorry about that, Miss Stone. I will pay you back, but the problem is I'm still trying to pay for my daughter's operation." Yes, your daughter," Jem said dismissively. Susan, right? Suzanne," Alicia corrected her kindly. And then a thought came to her. "Oh, by the way, ma'am, if I may be so bold, tomorrow is Noel, and my family is expecting me to celebrate with them, so I was wondering, could I maybe have at least half the day off tomorrow?" "Half the day off," Jem muttered, half to herself. Then she sighed. "Very well, Mrs. Duffield, I grant your wish, but I'll dock you half the day's pay." Then she pondered the situation. "Let's see now. I pay you £3 an hour for 8 hours per day. £3 and 3 shillings, ma'am," Alicia corrected. "Oh, yes," Jem remembered. "I gave you that raise a year ago when you agreed to start doing my laundry." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, forget about it right now. Get on with your work, Duffield, while I review my books." "Yes," Alicia nodded timidly and replied, "Yes, ma'am." Then she sat down in the high chair at the balancing book table and started writing down the figures for the day. "And when you're done, look over the eviction notices for tomorrow," Jem added. Alicia looked up from her work and turned toward Jem. "But tomorrow's Noel, Miss Stone," she protested gently. "Very well, you may gift wrap them," said Jem. Meanwhile, Jem sat at her own desk, counting her ill-gotten earnings to herself. Now let's see. Mr. Applegate's £200 loan with 17% interest, compounded daily. Let's see what that brings us to. She wrote down her own figures on a piece of yellowed parchment as she thought gleefully. I love money. That's what I've lived for most of my life. She chuckled softly and evilly. At that moment, the door flew open, ringing the bell and startling Jem out of her reverie. A young blonde woman stepped in with a green Noël wreath. This was Jem's niece, Carly Jo Wilson, or as her friends like to call her, CJ. Happy Noel, Aunt Gemini, CJ greeted her less than thrilled aunt. CJ! Alicia exclaimed happily. It's good to see you. Happy Noel to you, too. Jem looked up from her work briefly and muttered under her breath disdainfully, Happy Noel. Then she glared at her niece and demanded, What's so happy about it? I say, Bah! Humbug! Noel a humbug, Aunt Gemini? CJ protested. Oh, surely you don't mean that. You keep saying Happy Noel as if you're thankful for it, Jem said scornfully. What right have you to be happy? You're poor enough. What right have you to be dismal, since CJ came back? You're rich enough. On this, Jem scowled deepened. My dear niece, if I could work my will, every idiot who goes about London with Happy Noel on their lips will be boiled in their own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through their hearts. Oh, Aunt Gemini! CJ scolded her. On this note, Jem glared at the blonde and told her, Niece, you keep Noel in your own way and let me keep it in mine. CJ paused before she said her next words. Noel is a period of enjoying the life we have and knowing we can do more to make a difference in the world. And even though this season has never put any extra gold or silver in my pocket, I believe Noel has done me good and will still do me good. And I say, the Creator bless it and bless us all. On this, Alicia started applauding vigorously. Well said, CJ, she praised her friend. But then Jem turned on her faithful employee and said with murderous calm, Another display like that from you, and you'll be on the dole come next year. On this, Alicia resumed her silence and went back to her balancing book. Just then the bell over the door rang again, signifying that someone else was entering. What am I running here? A charity? Jem demanded of herself. People can't just let me be this year! But she was careful not to say it out loud as two men in black suits approached her desk. Miss Gemini Stone, we presume, said the man on the left. Who wants to know? Jem asked coolly. The men approached her desk, and the other man on the right explained, We are from the Victorian Order Charity Society. We'd like to speak with you about a donation. A donation, Jem repeated, keeping her cool tone. We're taking donations for the indigent and destitute, said the man on the left. Ah, welcome, said CJ. This jolly old woman behind the desk is Gemini Stone. She's very generous to charities. My dear niece! Jem hissed in a snarl. Meanwhile, the men ignored that hissing snarl as the same man went on. At the Victorian Order Charity Society, we feel it necessary that the impoverished and destitute be cared for, especially during this festive time of year. Jem's eyes went wide with mock disbelief. But are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? She demanded. Oh, plenty of those, ma'am, said the man on the right. Oh, well, said Jem, chuckled briefly. For a moment there I was worried. Some of us are going door to door collecting pledges for the impoverished, said the man on the left. What may we put you down for? Nothing, Jem said simply. Ah, you wish to remain anonymous, said the same man. What I wish is to be left alone, Jem corrected him. I don't find myself happy during the Noel season. That is certainly true, CJ confirmed. And I can't afford to make idle people happy, Jem went on. That is certainly not true, CJ declared calmly. Don't you have other things to do this afternoon besides bother me around your niece? Jem suddenly scolded. Jem smiled sadly and sympathetically. Sadly I do, Aunt Gemini, she told her. And so, I shall make my contribution. She paused as she handed one of the men a few shillings, and leave you to make yours. Well, thank you very much, one man said. May the Creator smile on you for your generosity, the other one said as CJ turned to leave. For a few measly shillings they thank her, Jem wondered. She sighed inwardly. The apple fell way far from the tree when she was born. Just then, CJ turned around again and offered, Oh, Aunt Gemini, please come and have Noel dinner with me and my husband and me tomorrow. Husband, Jem muttered under her breath. Why in heaven's name did you get married? Why? CJ repeated. Because I fell in love. Love! Jem cried incredulously. She chuckled disdainfully. That's the only thing on earth sillier than a happy Noel! It's no use, Aunt Gemini, CJ said calmly but firmly. I shall keep my Noel spirit to the last. Happy Noel to you, and a healthy new year. Happy Noel, CJ, said Alicia. Happy Noel, Alicia, CJ returned, and opened the door to leave. Humbug! Jem called after her niece. So as you can see, Gemini Stone, or you, as you prefer to call her, Gemstone, is the Scrooge of this story, and she and her niece is the Master Fred of this story. Let's continue. Okay, this scene takes place at night, where Gemstone and Alicia are about to close up for the night, and about to close up for Noel Day. Let's continue. Let's read. The small clocks tinkled 7 times, signifying that it was 7 o'clock in the evening. And on that note, Alicia closed her balancing book and clambered down off her high chair. And as she was preparing to leave, she realized that she had one more thing to ask from her employer. She approached Jem's desk and cleared her throat, causing Jem to look up from her work. Are you still here? Are you still here? Jem asked wearily. I just wanted to speak with you again, Miss Stone, Alicia began. And I was hoping that, well... And then the words tumbled out all at once. Could I have the entire next day off? Jem's eyes went wide with disbelief. The entire next day off? She cried incredulously. It's just that... No, Alicia paused briefly and then continued. It doesn't seem necessary to open the office tomorrow. Other businesses will be closed, so I'll have no one to do business with. And I asked, what's in it for me? Jem asked skeptically. Well... it'll waste a lot of expensive coal for the fire, Alicia tried. Jem retained her skeptical look and retorted, That is a poor excuse for picking someone's pocket every December 25th. On that, Alicia lowered her gaze. But since I am the only one in this room who seems to believe that, she sighed disdainfully, take tomorrow off. And then she tossed her a bundle of laundry and said, Here's another laundry bundle for you. Make sure all of it is spotless. Thank you, Miss Stone, Alicia said kindly, and turned to leave with the bundle over her shoulder. But be here all the earlier the next day, Jem ordered. Very well, ma'am, Alicia replied, and a happy Noel to you. Then she opened the door, which tinkled the little bell above the door frame, and headed home, shutting the door behind her. When she heard the door shut tight, Jem knew she was all alone, and so she muttered, Bah! Humbug! And after she had crossed her last T and dotted her last I, Gemini Stone started for home, Heatheria continued. She lived in chambers that had once belonged to our old business partner, Andrea Stewart. Just then there was a knock on the door. "I'll get it," Will said Luan, and rose from her seat to answer the door. And just when it was getting good, Galatea pouted playfully as Luan opened the door. "Hey everyone!" A female with strawberry blonde hair greeted the family. "How's it going?" "Mother!" Heatheria and her brothers exclaimed. At the same time, Galatea exclaimed, "Aunt Marissa!" Marissa smiled. "I heard you guys were snowbound here in Deloria, so I thought I'd drop by and keep you company." "But how did you get here?" asked Heatheria. "I thought all mass transit traffic in and out of Deloria was suspended." "Remember, you're not the only wizards of Deloria in the known world," Marissa reminded her. "While my quintessence powers are now within Galatea, my basic powers have not diminished." "So you blinked here? All the way from Switzerland?" Remington asked incredulously. Marissa nodded with a grin. "And I'd heard that Heatheria was regaling the family with a Noël story," she went on. "Well, just sit down. It's just getting good," Heatheria offered. "Thank you. I'd love to," Marissa responded, and joined the family in the circle. "Okay, where was I?" Heatheria murmured, half to herself. "Gemstone was going home, and that's home once belonged to Andrea Stewart," Nathaniel reminded her. "Oh, right." Heatheria confirmed and went on with her story. "The building was a dismal heap of brick on a dark street. Now, once again, I must ask you to remember that Andrea Stewart was dead and decaying in her grave." "Yuck!" Nathaniel and Remington exclaimed disdainfully. But Heatheria ignored the exclamation and lowered her voice to a whisper as she said, "That one thing you must remember, or nothing I say from this point will seem wondrous." "Why are you whispering?" Luan asked. "It's for dramatic emphasis," Heatheria said, and it's simply in a normal voice. Jem walked through the snowy streets of London. She always discovered that she felt a little younger whenever she walked where she needed to go, heading back to the home that was once her partner's. But just as she walked up the steps to the front door, she started hearing an eerie voice from thin air. "Gemstone," they started calling softly at first, and as Jem looked around, it began growing louder. "Who's there?" Jem demanded, and as the voice called her name again, she began to worry. And then she told herself, "There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as ghosts." Unfortunately, the more she told herself, the more doubtful she became as she worked her key in the rusty old lock on the door. I have to remember to replace that lock. But just then, the eerie voice called out her name again. "Gemstone." And on that note, a wild wind started blowing from no specific direction. For no apparent reason, Jem stared up at the ornate door knocker. But to her surprise, it started changing shape into a face that Gemstone recognized so well, oh so well. "Andrea Stewart?" Jem whispered fearfully. And on that note, the new face on the knocker screamed Gemstone with a vengeance. "Gemstone!" On this note, Jem screamed herself and nearly fell over backwards and down the porch steps. So as you can see, I needed to put in a Jacob Marley of some sorts. So Andrea Stewart is the Jacob Marley of the group of the story. Let's continue reading. This scene is where Gemstone is about to meet up with her long deceased partner, Andrea Stewart. Let's read. Jem sat back down in her fireside chair and took a bite of her dinner. But just as she was about to take her second bite, an ill wind started blowing through the drafty, spacious room. Have to address this problem, Jem realized. Must be a window open somewhere. But just then, she remembered that she had reinforced all the windows with shatterproof glass, so no burglars could break in and enter her house. Unless it's not even human, she realized to herself, and it's not even from this world. Jem's heart beat furiously as she awaited the unexpected, but she wasn't prepared for what was about to happen next. The flame on her candle suddenly died on its wick, and soon all was dark. Within the shadows, she could make out only a few objects, but others looked like monsters with no light. Never thought I'd be afraid of the dark, Jem thought fearfully, but then she realized, get real. What you're afraid of is the unknown. That incident at the front door is having you jump at everything that moves, and a few things that don't. But just then she heard a ghostly wailing coming from the shadows, and then she began trembling with fear. Who's there? She asked uneasily. I know someone's here. Show yourself! Please, please, don't be a ghost, she urged silently. Just then the room began glowing in eerie ice blue, and from nowhere the ghostly moaning resumed, but from this time it spoke her name. Gemini Stone! And then it emerged, a transparent, translucently blue-colored woman covered in chains from head to toe. No! Jem quavered fearfully. Her voice rose to a tearful shout. No! Stay away from me! Gemini Stone! The ghostly woman moaned again before she stepped on Jem's cane on the floor and tripped, falling flat on her face with a scream. Jem stopped cringing in fear long enough to realize who had come to visit her. Only one person is that blind that she can't see her hand in front of her face. But just to make sure, put up a sign, will you? The ghostly woman commanded Jem pointedly. I've been dead for 7 years! You don't expect me to just know where everything is now, do you? Okay, that's it, Jem fumed. There's only one person in life or death who could be this annoying! Who are you? She demanded of the ghost. Ask me who I was, the ghostly woman told her. Jem rolled her eyes and threw up her hands in exasperation. All right, who were you? She demanded. Don't you recognize me, Jem? The ghost asked of her. In life, I was your business partner, Andrea Stewart. Andrea Stewart? Jem repeated incredulously. But then she shook her head and decided, impossible! It looks like you, but I refuse to believe it. And believe in ghosts! Why do you doubt your senses? Andrea asked her. Because a little thing can affect them, Jem told the ghost. The slightest disorder of the stomach can make them cheat. She raised a threatening finger toward Andrea and declared, you may be a bit of undigested beef, a blob of mustard, a crumb of cheese, even an underdone potato. She paused for a brief moment and then finished, yes, there's more of gravy than of grave about you. On that note, the ghost of Andrea Stewart raised her hands to the ceiling, and lightning struck while thunder boomed in the drafty living room. Jem cringed and screamed in fear while covering her eyes. No, please, she begged the ghost. After a few moments of rolling thunder and lightning flashes, Jem took her hands from over her eyes and quavered, Mercy, dreadful apparition, why do you stalk me? I come bearing a message, Gemini Stone, Andrea told her. Stray from your dark path while you are still able. If you do not, eternity will be the worst torment you could ever not even begin to imagine. Humbug, Jem scoffed. How could I experience eternal torment? I gratefully accept paradise if I could will it. Do not mock Do not mock my warning, Andrea warned. You will end up in Hades unless you change for the better. Never! Jem insisted. This world has already shown me that it is a dark, cruel place. Eternity would be no much better. She sighed wistfully. But you, Andrea, I envied you when you were partnered with me. You were almost like me, a good woman of business. Business! Andrea screeched at the top of her lungs. Mankind was my business! I cheated and swindled all those who would never turn a deaf ear had I needed help. And look at how I was rewarded! She threw her chains over Jem, weighing her down with them so that she fell out of her chair and onto her knees. I must now be aware of the chains I had forged in life, and I can never be forgiven for what I have done. And the same thing will happen to you, Gemini Stone! Jem struggled to get up from the floor, but the chains that Andrea had thrown over her were too heavy. No! She cried. You can't be serious! Please, give me some sign that there still holds hope for me. I prophesy this for you, Gemini Stone, Andrea began. There is a light at the end of your dark tunnel, but only if you choose to step forward into it. Tonight, you will be haunted by 3 spirits. 3 spirits? Jem repeated, looking up at Andrea. Was that the light at the end of the tunnel you mentioned? It is. Andrea replied as Jem found strength from an unknown source to lift herself up from the floor despite the weight of Andrea's chains. Well, in that case, I think I'd rather not, Jem tried to decline. Suddenly she groaned in pain as she felt an unearthly force push her back down onto her knees. And as she looked up again, she noticed that Andrea had her hand raised toward her. She's doing this, Jem realized to herself. She's going to do everything she can to make me listen, even if it makes destroying me. But then the pain that racked her whole body stopped as suddenly as it started. Jem looked up to see that Andrea had lowered her hand. Stand and listen, Andrea ordered Jem matter-of-factly. The other woman obeyed. As I was saying, you will be haunted by 3 spirits. Listen to them and do what they say, or when you reach my status, you'll be in much more pain than that. With nervous, unstable legs, Jem staggered backward and landed in her chair as Andrea continued. Expect the first spirit tonight when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I just meet them out all at once and have that over with? On that note, Andrea's face morphed into a fanged, red-eyed vampire face that glared and growled. That made Jem cringe in fear again. Right, shutting up now, she promised the ghost. As I was saying, Andrea went on, expect the second at 2, and the third will come when the time is right. Remember, it is not too late to change. Now, farewell! With that, Andrea took one great leap and flew out, passing through the living room door. On that note, Jem shouted after her, Andrea, watch out man first! But then she winced as she heard Andrea's desperate screaming, just mingled with a clattering commotion from outside her room. On this note, Jem knew it was pointless, but she still finished her thought with, Stop! So, as you can see, I decided to put in an adaptation of A Christmas Carol that I watched on television. If you've watched television, you know which adaptation I inserted. Let's continue. This scene is where Jem meets the first of the spirits, This will be the spirit of Christmas past, but I named the spirits after the Norse Norns of the past. You'll know what I'm talking about. Let's read. Gemstone, feeling more drained than she had ever felt in her life, found the strength to climb into her four-poster bed and pull the drapes shut. Before she felt herself drifting off, she muttered, "Spirits, load of humbug!" For a while, she slept soundly and peacefully, until she heard the tinkling Westminster chimes from the clock on her bedside table. Then she heard one chime, indicating it was 1 o'clock in the morning. On this, Jem's eyes fluttered open, but for some reason she didn't feel tired at all when she awoke. Strange, she thought to herself, but then she realized what she had been told. It's 1 o'clock. What was it Andrea said? But just as she finished that thought, the usually dark room became bathed in pure white light, and Jem cried out in surprise and fear. Taking several deep breaths and allowing her heartbeat to slow down, she steeled herself and opened the curtains. For a while, she only saw a blinding white light before her, but then that light receded and took the form of a young teenage girl. This teenage girl sported a blonde, boyish hairstyle and wore a long, flowing rose-pink gown. She carried a scepter highlighted by a single large topaz. "Hello, Gemstone," she said to the teenage girl. "Are you one of the spirits prophesied to visit me?" Jem asked the girl. "I am," the younger girl confirmed. Jem rose from her bed and approached the young spirit slowly and cautiously. She reached out to her and discovered that her hand had passed right through the other girl. She let out a squeal of shock and realized to herself, "She is a spirit." "Who and what are you?" she asked the spirit. "Mankind calls me Erd, the Norn of the past," the younger girl told her. "I protect all that was and all that has been." "What business brings you here?" Jem asked Erd. "Your welfare," the teenage Norn told her. "My welfare?" Jem repeated and scoffed at her with an inward Then she went on, "The night's unbroken rest would aid my welfare." "Your salvation, then," Erd corrected herself. "Take heed. Come with me." On this note, Erd raised her staff toward the bedroom window. It opened suddenly, letting a blast of Arctic air into Jem's room. "You want me to go with you?" "Out there!" Jem cried. "I'm not going out there from this height! I'll fall!" "Not at all," said Erd. "A touch of my hand and you shall fly." "This is weird," Jem found herself thinking, but she followed the Norn's advice and clasped hands with the other girl. Then Erd raised her staff to the ceiling, and all at once, Jem felt herself rising from the floor. She screamed in fear as Erd flew them both out the window and over the Victorian London village. Jem didn't take it into account to look down until she realized that she wasn't falling. Instead, she was flying above the city. She screamed in fear again and shouted, "Erd! Yes! Yes?" Erd prompted calmly. But at that point, Jem figured telling an omniscient being like her what they both already knew was pointless, so she just responded with, "Nothing!" The twosome flew over the city and toward the ocean, where a bright light started rising and shone over the horizon. "Erd, what is that light?" Jem asked curiously. "Can't be gone." "It is the past," Erd told her. Jem screamed one final time as the light intensified itself and engulfed her and Erd within its radiance. As you can see, Gemstone is about to visit her past, thanks to Erd, the Norn of the past. I hope anytime you so I hope you enjoyed this little excerpt reading. If you like my excerpt readings, like, comment, and share this video. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Also, be sure to purchase my books as a Christmas present if you're interested in my excerpt readings. So says the leader, signing off. Peace out.